Welcome to China Events. I am Jason. China may see Yellen as coming to Beijing to beg, but China is actually the one that needs to be rescued, so Yellen is coming to China's rescue, said Bloomberg, the U.S. Treasury Secretary Yellen's visit to China. Yellen's visit is the second time the U.S. sends a senior official to China after Blinken. Before the visit, Yellen emphasized the three principles, including the pan-securitization clause, indicating that the two sides will work together to solve problems, and said the visit will be based on the consensus reached by the U.S. and Chinese leaders last year, aimed at addressing global challenges. In a move that has attracted much attention, the U.S. Treasury Department said Yellen's visit will build on the consensus reached by U.S. and Chinese leaders last year and is aimed at communicating with China on areas of mutual concern to address global challenges. U.S. Treasury Secretary Yellen has arrived in Beijing on July 6 to begin her visit to China. When China announced this news, it also indicated that it was agreed by China and the United States rather than invited. Some believe that Yellen's visit to China will be as fruitless as Blinken's, but others think she may make some progress in China-U.S. relations. However, the U.S. media Bloomberg gave a special angle. Yellen came to Beijing this time not to beg China, but to save China. Bloomberg cites a number of reasons, including lower-than-expected economic growth, declining exports, high unemployment, sluggish real estate, high debt, and the fact that China's economy is at risk of collapse at any time. In addition, the article says that China has a deeper crisis, namely the anti-spy law that took effect on July 1, as well as the previous U.S.-led ban and tough diplomatic rhetoric, which will scare investors away. The author also thoughtfully says that China's usual emphasis on state-owned enterprises rather than private ones will also discourage foreign investment. So the author suggests that China should not be hostile to Yellen's arrival, but should welcome her with open arms. Then the author suggests that China should suspend actions against U.S. companies, suspend the anti-spy law, suspend tough talk and military actions against Taiwan in order to ease U.S.-China relations. And finally, the author advises China. The author concludes by advising China not to think about trading these practices with the U.S., but to show sufficient good faith. On the eve of Yellen's arrival, China decisively announced export control measures on gallium and germanium-related products, which is actually a clear signal to the United States. China cannot sit back and watch the United States form a blockade circle against China, and if the United States has to bring Sino-US relations to a worse state, then China will not hesitate to fight back. Wei Jiangwo, former vice minister of the Chinese Ministry of Commerce, said in an interview that these Chinese measures are well thought out and will make some countries feel panic and more painful, and these will be a start. Professor Jean Sonrong, former vice president of the School of International Relations at Renmin University, also said that China has at least 20 countermeasures that will definitely impress some Western countries. In fact, Yellen came to China with a request, especially to persuade China to stop selling U.S. debt and to continue buying it. China is a proper creditor of the United States, holding more than $800 billion in U.S. treasuries. In addition, the U.S. will continue to issue treasury bonds. If we look at the world, the most capable buyer of U.S. debt is still China. Japan, as the first major debtor, purchased $1.1 trillion. By May of this year, Japan's foreign exchange reserves were only $1.2 trillion. Tokyo is now unable to continue buying. According to the U.S. media Bloomberg, China's foreign exchange reserves, including the hidden ones, are up to $6 trillion. In March, China increased its holdings of U.S. debt by $20.4 billion because of the U.S. banking crisis. However, in April, China resumed its trend of reducing its holdings, albeit by a small amount, but it clearly seems that China still has the intention to further compress its dollar assets. The U.S. national debt is at $32 trillion and will continue to be raised. Washington is simply not going to pay back this money. By holding U.S. debt, China is only putting its people's money at risk. It is clear that China is increasingly not cooperating with Washington's demands. How can China cooperate more with those who owe the debt when Washington has done so many things that hurt the debtors? Is it really true that the one who owes the debt is the boss? Whatever Yellen's agenda, China has long made it clear that if the U.S. wants to cooperate, it should show sincerity in doing so, rather than calculating for its own political self-interest, as Blinken did.